Building measurement concept, number 15. In this one we look at the concept of measuring some quantities as extra over. Suppose this is a basement excavation, 20 metres by 10 metres on plan at 8 metres deep. We could measure the volume of excavation quite simply by measuring the plan area 20 metres by 10 by the depth 8 metres to get a total volume of excavation of 1,600 cubic metres. But let's suppose that half of the excavation, the first 4 metres deep, is in other than rock, and below that level it's going to be in hard rock. So we could measure our quantities, first of all by measuring the OTR as the plan area times the depth of 4 metres, and then the rock, the plan area again, also times 4 metres deep. We'd have 800 cubic metres of each type of excavation. That might appear in a bill of quantities like this, with 800 cubic metres of each. And I've put rates against these, rock excavation being rather more expensive than excavation in OTR, in soil or sand or whatever else it may be classified as other than rock. We have a total, therefore, total cost to do this job of $160,000. Notice that the rock item has been marked as a provisional quantity. So here's our rate for other than rock, our somewhat higher rate for rock, and then our total price. Now, why is the rock item marked as a provisional quantity? Well, it's because we aren't certain of how much rock we will actually excavate until we do it. The rock level isn't going to be perfectly 4 metres below the ground level. So, what do we do with the provisional quantity? Well, what happens in this sort of instance is that records are kept of how much rock is actually excavated, and then the cost is adjusted either up or down to reflect the difference between the provisional quantity, which is only an approximation, and the actual quantity that we measure when we do the work on site. Now, the idea of extra over gives us a different way of measuring this, and it is the way that the standard method requires us to measure rock excavation. In this case, we measure all of the excavation as if it were in OTR, so that's our original figure of 1,600 cubic metres. Then we measure extra over for rock, which is only the quantity of rock excavation. The difference comes when we price these. So here's the priced bill. We've still got $50 a cubic metre for our 1,600 cubic metres of OTR. But now the rate for the extra over is only the additional cost over and above the cost in other than rock for excavating in rock. So instead of being $150, it's 150 minus 50, therefore the rate for the extra over is 100. The total price, you'll see, is still the same. Now, let's say the actual quantity of rock was 1,000 cubic metres rather than the approximate quantity that we measured, that provisional quantity of 800 cubic metres. That means there's actually an extra 200 cubic metres of rock excavation which needs to be priced at the higher rate. The contractor's entitled to be paid for the extra rock excavation because he had no way of knowing at the time of pricing exactly how much rock there would be. So this is what we do. If we had measured it as we did originally, with 800 cubic metres of each kind of excavation, we would then have to change this first quantity here down by 200, because there's now 200 cubic metres more of rock, therefore 200 cubic metres less of OTR. That's still priced at $50, but we have to change that price there, of course, the product of 650, and then we have to change this quantity here to 1,000, and we have to recalculate that, and we find we now get a total of 180,000, which means there's an additional cost of $20,000 for the extra rock excavation. If we've measured as extra over, though, as we have here, then all we need to do, if we've got extra over in play, is we change this quantity up to the new quantity of 1,000, and we recalculate that price there, And look, we still get a price of $180,000 for the whole job. We haven't had to do anything to the first item because that doesn't change. And that $180,000 that we've got there still gives us the additional $20,000. The advantage here is that we only need to adjust one quantity rather than two, so it's less calculation. Extra over is not used as much as it was, but the Australian Standard Method of Measurement still directs us to use it in a few instances, and most of those are related to rock excavation. But you will come across the idea of extra over from time to time, and you must know how to deal with it, particularly to apply the correct rate to an extra over item, because it'll be the difference between the higher rate and the lower rate that's used for the measurement of all the base work. In this case, the measurement in other than rock, and the price of that as compared to the higher price of excavation in rock.